No one would dare wield the forbidden sword until a human was chosen by it. The twin suns of Varian bled light across a jagged horizon of indigo mountains. Their glow carved the alien landscape into sharp contrasts. Obsidian cliffs that looked as if they had been split by ancient gods, valleys covered in strange moss that shimmered when touched by wind, and rivers of silver that reflected the sky like molten glass. It was a place no human had ever set foot in, at least none who had lived long enough to tell the story. And yet, Alex Carter stood there, his boots crunched against a layer of dark crystalline sand, each step ringing faintly, as if the ground itself carried echoes. His breath came shallow under the thin atmosphere, though the rebreather clipped to his collar hissed steadily to keep him alive. The air tasted metallic through the filter, and the sky above him, painted with ribbons of turquoise clouds, felt like standing under the dome of another universe. He had come searching for a rumor, an artifact, half myth and half curse, whispered among scattered colonies and smugglers' outposts. They called it the Sword of Arinder. Some claimed it was forged by the first warriors of the Caliph, an alien race that ruled this sector long before humanity stumbled into it. Others said it wasn't forged at all, but grown, alive in some way only the ancients understood. One truth united all the stories: no human could touch it and live. Alex had not come here to prove anyone wrong. He had come because he had nothing left. The war back on Earth had taken his brother, his home, and most of his future. Out here, on the edge of nowhere, death was not the worst thing that could happen to him. Meaninglessness was. The climb up the obsidian ridge burned his legs, the alien gravity tugging differently with every step. When he finally crested the ridge, he froze. There it was, embedded in a jagged altar of black stone. A blade stood upright, as though the mountain itself had grown it. Its surface gleamed like liquid steel, but darker, swallowing light rather than reflecting it. Strange veins of cobalt light pulsed faintly along its edge, breathing like a heartbeat. The sword did not rest. It waited. And he was not alone. From the shadows of the ridge, she appeared. Her silhouette first, tall, lithe, every movement sharp with a kind of predatory grace. Then the details, skin the color of twilight ocean, smooth and luminous. Hair the same blue, cascading down her back like woven threads of starlight. Her eyes burned silver, pupils narrow like a hawk's. A caliph. Alex stiffened. He had only heard of them in fragments. Warriors, guardians, a people as feared as they were admired. And standing here, in her presence, he understood why. "You should not be here, human," she said, her voice low but carrying easily over the wind. It was an accent unlike anything he had heard, each syllable sharpened by years of discipline. "This place is sacred. That weapon will not suffer your touch." Alex's throat was dry. He wanted to speak, but words tangled behind the reality of her presence. She wasn't just alien. She was magnificent, terrifying, alive in a way that made every nerve in his body scream both danger and awe. "I came for answers," he managed finally. "If the stories are true, maybe they're meant for more than your people. Maybe they're meant for anyone brave enough to try." Her silver eyes narrowed. For a heartbeat, Alex thought she might strike him down where he stood. Instead, she stepped closer. The ground seemed to bend with her presence, as though she carried gravity in her very bones. "You do not understand what you ask," she said. "That blade has slain gods. It has ended dynasties. Every caliph who touched it gave a piece of themselves away. No human has ever survived it." Her gaze lingered on him, curious now, measuring. "Why would you risk death for something you cannot wield?" Alex turned back to the sword. It seemed to pulse faster now, as if aware of his presence. The veins of cobalt brightened, throwing shadows across his face. "Because I've already lost everything worth protecting," he said quietly. "If this is the end, then at least it will mean something." Silence stretched between them. The wind howled against the cliffs, carrying with it an almost mournful sound. Then the alien woman moved again, closer, until Alex could see the faint ridges along her skin, the way her hair caught the twin suns like liquid sapphire. Her expression softened, though only slightly. "My name is Serena," she said at last. "And if you insist on tempting fate, then you should know I will not stop you. But if the sword rejects you, I will not save you either." Alex nodded. His heart pounded, not only from fear but from something he couldn't name. He had come here seeking a relic, but what stood before him now was alive, watching him, and perhaps judging him. He took a step toward the altar. The sword hummed louder, the air itself trembling. Serena's gaze never left him. And in that moment, Alex Carter realized this was not just about a weapon. It was about destiny, one he was never supposed to claim, yet somehow, impossibly, it waited for him. The air around the sword thickened with a strange pressure, like a storm waiting to break. Every breath Alex took seemed heavier, each step closer to the blade a defiance of the natural order carved into this alien world. Behind him, Serena's voice cut through the silence like tempered steel. You truly mean to touch it? He didn't look back. Yes. She exhaled sharply, a sound between disbelief and frustration. The language of the Caliph translated strangely through the small device in Alex's ear, but her tone needed no interpreter. She was torn between anger and a reluctant, almost painful recognition. You humans, she said, her silver eyes narrowing. You treat death as if it is a coin to gamble with. You think courage is enough to bind a weapon that has consumed entire bloodlines. Alex reached the base of the altar. The rock was carved with deep grooves, ancient inscriptions glowing faintly, though the symbols meant nothing to him. He brushed his gloved hand across them, feeling the subtle vibration thrumming beneath. Maybe courage isn't enough, he admitted, but sometimes it's all we've got. The sword pulsed, light flaring brighter along its veins. Serena's hand shot out in a sudden motion. For the first time, Alex saw her weapon, a curved staff of dark metal strapped across her back, tipped with a blade that shimmered like frozen lightning. Stop! Her voice was sharper now, commanding, almost desperate. You do not know what you are awakening. Alex froze. His instinct screamed at him to listen, but something stronger pulled him forward. It wasn't arrogance or recklessness. It was the same drive that had carried him through battles he hadn't been supposed to survive. The same force that whispered in his chest every time he thought of the brother he couldn't save. If this sword kills me, he said softly, then maybe it means I was never meant to live beyond this moment. The word struck her. He saw in her face the flicker of recognition, of pain she had buried deep. You speak like one who has already buried too much, she murmured. Alex finally turned. The suns caught Serena's face, casting sharp shadows over the smooth planes of her features. For all her power and poise, there was something human in her eyes at that moment. Grief, unspoken but undeniable. Who did you lose? Alex asked before he could stop himself. Her jaw tightened. This world, she said, her voice colder now, was a battlefield long before your kind ever touched the stars. My people were its guardians. I was raised to believe the sword was sacred, that only the chosen line of Caliph would wield it. But one by one they fell. Brothers, sisters, leaders. And when I reached for it, she shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her throat. It rejected me. The weight of her words settled heavy between them. Alex hadn't expected confession. He hadn't expected her voice to tremble, even slightly, as she admitted her failure. He swallowed hard. So you think it'll reject me too? I know it will, she said flatly. You are not of us. You are lesser, fragile, a spark that burns out in decades while we endure for centuries. The insult might have cut deeper, if not for the sorrow behind it. Alex met her gaze and didn't look away. Maybe that's why it should be me, he said. Because I don't have centuries. Because I have nothing left to lose. The silence stretched again, broken only by the low hum of the sword. Then, the ground beneath the altar shuddered. Both of them spun toward it. The blade's veins of light pulsed violently now, spilling across the stone. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, glowing with cobalt fire. The mountain itself seemed to groan, and from within the fissures, a sound rose, low, guttural, like the growl of some vast, sleeping beast. Serena cursed in her own tongue. Her staff slid into her hands, the blade igniting with raw energy. You fool, she shouted. You've awakened the wardens. Wardens? Alex asked, backing away from the altar. The answer came as the rocks split wide, and shapes pulled themselves free from the earth. Towering figures, their bodies carved from the same obsidian as the mountain, eyes burning with the same cobalt light as the sword. Their movements were slow but inexorable, and their size alone made Alex's stomach turn. Each was easily 3 times his height. "They are guardians bound to the sword," Serenia hissed. "They will destroy anything unworthy that dares to approach it." Alex drew the small rifle slung at his side, though the weapon looked pitiful compared to the giants that now circled the altar. "Guess that means us," he muttered. Serenia shot him a sharp glare. "Do not flatter yourself. You mean nothing to them. They rise for the sword, not for you." Still, when the first warden raised its stone arm and brought it crashing down toward Alex, it didn't feel that way. He dove to the side as the impact split the ground where he had stood, shards of crystal spraying into the air. Serenia leapt forward, her staff blazing. She spun with terrifying precision, striking the warden's arm and shattering a chunk of stone. The creature barely flinched. "Run," she shouted. But Alex didn't run. He couldn't. Something inside him told him this was the test, the beginning of the trial. If he fled now, the sword would never recognize him. He raised his rifle and fired. The bullets sparked uselessly off the warden's chest, but the distraction gave Serenia an opening. She slashed deep, carving glowing lines across the creature's torso. It staggered, roaring like a landslide. "You're going to die here," she snapped, even as she struck again. "Then I'll die trying," Alex shot back. The words lit something in her. She snarled, but this time it wasn't just frustration. It was defiance, and maybe, just maybe, the faintest flicker of respect. Together, human and alien stood before the guardians of the forbidden sword, the mountain shaking beneath their struggle. And as the wardens closed in, the blade in the altar pulsed brighter still, like a heart racing faster, like it was watching. The obsidian plateau shook like the back of a living beast as the wardens closed in. Dust rained from the cliffs, sparks of cobalt lightning flashed across the cracked altar, and the hum of the forbidden sword became a roar that rattled Alex's bones. Serenia's staff whirled in a blur of blue fire. Every strike chipped chunks of stone from the towering guardians, but for every wound she carved, they seemed to grow angrier, their molten eyes burning hotter. Alex darted between them, a fragile figure in comparison, his rifle spitting bursts of fire that did little more than distract. The warden's stone fists hammered down around him, each strike a small earthquake. He barely dodged in time, rolling across the glassy ground and scrambling to his feet with grit in his teeth. "Your weapon is useless," Serenia shouted over the chaos. She spun, striking one warden's knee, shattering it into a spray of glowing shards. The giant fell to one side, crashing into the rocks with enough force to make Alex stumble. "Yeah, thanks, I noticed," he yelled back, ejecting his last magazine. A shadow fell across him. He turned just as another warden's hand, massive as a hovercraft, swept toward him. He dove, but too late. The blow clipped him, sending him flying across the plateau. He hit hard, pain exploding through his ribs, his rebreather hissing as the impact cracked its casing. Gasping, Alex rolled onto his back. Above him, the sword loomed, its glow now blinding, its hum vibrating in his chest like a second heartbeat. Serenia saw it too. Between strikes, she screamed at him, "Do not touch it. You will not survive." Her warning echoed, but his vision blurred. The wardens were converging, 5 of them still towering, their steps shaking the mountain. Serenia fought like a storm, but she was slowing. Sweat slicked her blue skin, her silver eyes burning with fury and fear. Alex pushed himself upright, pain stabbing his side with every breath. His rifle was gone, shattered on the rocks. His choices were gone too. "If I don't act, we both die here." The sword pulsed again, louder, closer, calling. He staggered toward it. "No." Serenia's voice broke, raw and desperate now. She lunged toward him, but a warden cut her off, its massive arm sweeping down. She spun to deflect it, her staff sparking as it clashed, but the impact threw her back across the stone. She hit hard, her weapon skidding from her grip. For the first time since Alex had seen her, she didn't rise immediately. The wardens turned their burning eyes on him. Alex's pulse hammered in his ears. He looked at Serenia, fierce, defiant even as she struggled to rise, and then at the blade. It didn't just glow anymore. It breathed. The cobalt veins pulsed in rhythm with his chest, faster with his fear. He reached out. The world seemed to hold its breath. His fingertips brushed the hilt. Agony ripped through him. Not fire, not electricity, something deeper. His veins burned as if molten metal had replaced his blood. His bones screamed. His vision turned white. Every cell in his body felt like it was being judged, measured, torn open. Alex collapsed to one knee, his hand still clutching the hilt. The sword pulsed harder, brighter, until the entire mountain blazed in cobalt light. The wardens froze mid-strike, their stone bodies trembling as if uncertain. Serena, half risen, stared in shock. Her voice came out hoarse. "It's not killing you." Alex couldn't answer. The pain was overwhelming, but beneath it was something else, a presence. The sword wasn't an object. It was alive. It saw him. It dug through his memories, his childhood under Earth's dying skies, his brother's laughter before the war, the sound of gunfire the night he lost everything. His grief, his anger, his stubborn refusal to stop moving forward. And then acceptance. The blade flared, brighter than the sun's, and the wardens roared. Alex ripped the sword free from the altar. The plateau split open, shockwaves racing across the mountain. The wardens convulsed, their obsidian forms cracking under the burst of light. One by one, they shattered, fragments raining down in thunderous cascades. Alex fell forward, the sword heavy in his hands, the glow still searing. His body shook violently, every nerve screaming. When the light finally dimmed, silence fell. Only the hum of the blade remained, steady and alive in his grip. Serena pushed herself upright, her chest heaving. For the first time, her composure was gone. Her silver eyes were wide, her face pale beneath its blue glow. She looked at him not with anger, but with something closer to disbelief and fear. "It chose you," she whispered. Alex swallowed blood and spit. His voice was ragged but firm. "Looks like it didn't get the memo about humans not being worthy." Her expression flickered, anger, confusion, and something softer buried beneath. She took a hesitant step closer, her gaze locked on the blade. "You don't understand. If it chose you, then the war begins again." Alex's grip tightened. War. But before she could answer, the ground beneath them trembled once more, deeper, heavier, like the heartbeat of something older than mountains. The sword hum grew louder, and Alex realized that drawing the blade hadn't ended the trial. It had only awakened what slept below. The hum of the sword grew until it was no longer sound, but vibration inside Alex's chest, rattling his bones, syncing with his heartbeat. He could feel it, alive, aware, pulling at him. Every time he blinked, flashes of images seared across his vision. Alien wars fought under skies burning red, legions of Kalith warriors falling in oceans of fire, and the sword itself drinking their strength, passing from one chosen hand to another. When his eyes cleared, Serena stood before him. Her staff hung loosely at her side, her blue skin shimmering with sweat, her silver eyes fixed on the weapon in his grasp. "You've doomed us both," she said softly. Alex's grip tightened on the hilt. "You mean saved us? Those wardens are gone. Without this sword, we'd be dead." She shook her head. "You don't understand. The wardens were only the first defense. The sword is a beacon. Every warden on this planet has felt its awakening. And worse, the enemy that destroyed my people will feel it too." The ground trembled again, and far in the distance, peaks of the Indigo Mountains cracked like splintered glass. Smoke rose in pillars as if the world itself were tearing open. Alex staggered, still reeling from the sword's weight. Not physical, but spiritual. It was as if he carried not just a blade, but the history of an entire civilization. His veins still burned with its fire, his skin tingling with aftershocks of its acceptance. "Then tell me what it wants," he demanded, his voice breaking. "Why me? Why not you, or anyone else from your people?" Serena's jaw clenched. She stepped closer, close enough for him to see the fine ridges on her skin, like faint constellations etched in blue. "Because it chooses the broken," she said bitterly. "It feeds on loss. That is why it denied me. I still hope to save what remained of my people. But you..." Her silver eyes softened, just barely. "You have nothing left. You are its perfect vessel." The words cut deeper than he expected. For a moment, Alex wanted to throw the weapon away, to reject the destiny forced on him. But the sword pulsed again, and something deep in his chest answered. He looked at Serena, her hair glowing under the twin suns, her face lit by the cobalt flare. In her, he saw not just alien beauty, but a reflection of his own grief. The same scar of loss etched in a different form. "We don't have to let it use us," he said. "Maybe together, we can decide what it's for." She stared at him. The wind whipped her hair around her face. The mountains groaned under the awakening, and for a heartbeat, time froze. Then she said quietly, "You speak like one of us." Another tremor ripped through the plateau. From the cracks in the distant ridges, shapes began to rise, larger than the wardens, wings unfurling like jagged sails, their bodies molten and vast. Serena grabbed his arm, her grip iron-strong. "We must leave. Now." Alex nodded, though his body screamed with exhaustion. They ran, side by side, across the fractured stone. Behind them, the awakened titans bellowed, their roars shaking the mountains into avalanches. As they sprinted toward the shadow of cavern, Alex risked a glance at Serena. Her eyes were fixed ahead, fierce and unyielding, but he could see it, the flicker of something that had not been there before. Not just fear, not just anger. Hope. For the first time since he'd arrived on this alien world, he wasn't running alone. And deep down, he knew this was no longer just about survival or destiny. It was about her. If the sword had chosen him, maybe fate had chosen her. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, for two souls fighting against everything the universe throws at them, hit that subscribe button, because there are many more stories like this waiting for you. The cavern swallowed them in darkness, a narrow passage that cut deep into the mountainside. The air was damp and heavy, carrying the mineral tang of alien stone. Behind them, the world rumbled, distant crashes and the echoing roars of the titans awakened by the sword. The sound chased them like a storm refusing to let go. Alex leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Every muscle in his body trembled, his chest still burning from the sword's energy. He tightened his grip on the hilt, afraid to let go, afraid it might vanish or turn on him if he did. Serena moved ahead, her staff casting a faint blue glow as she touched the walls, scanning for danger. Her movements were sharp, but Alex could see the fatigue in her shoulders, the faint limp in her step. She was wounded, though she refused to admit it. Finally, she turned, her silver eyes flashing in the dim light. "You should have died out there," she said, her voice low, steady, but carrying a tremor beneath it. "Every human who has touched that blade has perished in agony. Yet here you stand, alive, carrying it as if it belongs to you." Alex swallowed hard. His throat was dry, his head pounding. Maybe it does. Her gaze lingered on him, unreadable. Then she stepped closer, her presence overwhelming in the narrow passage. The blue light from her staff danced across her skin, illuminating the ridges along her arms, the faint shimmer in her hair. "It does not belong to you," she said sharply. "It belongs to itself, and it will demand a price." Alex forced himself to meet her eyes. "Then I'll pay it." She studied him, and for the first time, she didn't look like she was preparing to strike him down. For the first time, there was something else there, reluctant respect, maybe even a trace of fear. The cavern trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling, coating their shoulders in fine black grit. The roars outside were growing closer. Serena turned away, muttering something in her language. When she spoke again, her tone was different, less sharp, more resigned. "We cannot stay here. The titans will tear through the mountain if they sense the blade for long. We must reach the underways." "The what?" Alex asked. "Passages carved by my ancestors," she explained quickly, striding deeper into the cave. "They lead beneath the mountains, to the ruins of our city. There, we may find shelter and answers." Alex followed, his steps unsteady but determined. The sword's hum had quieted, but he could still feel it pulsing in his veins, as if it were part of him now. As they moved deeper, the air grew colder. Strange crystals jutted from the walls, glowing faintly, casting shifting shadows that made the cavern feel alive. Finally, when they paused to rest, Alex sank to the ground, leaning back against the stone. Serena remained standing, her posture rigid, though her breathing was heavier than before. "You're hurt," Alex said quietly. Her silver eyes snapped to him, sharp as a blade. "I am Caliph." Pain does not break us. He managed a weak smile. Yeah, well, humans say the same thing, but usually we're lying. To his surprise, her lips twitched, almost forming a smile before she turned away. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant rumble of the world outside. Finally, Alex spoke again. Back there, when you thought I was going to die, why'd you try to stop me? She froze. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, without looking at him, she said, because I did not want to watch another soul destroyed by that blade. Her voice softened, almost too quiet to hear. I have seen too many. Alex's chest tightened. He thought of his brother, of the war, of the way loss had hollowed him out until nothing mattered. And in that moment, he understood her in a way words couldn't reach. He wanted to say something that might bridge the impossible distance between them. But before he could, the cavern shook violently. A roar split the air, closer than before, echoing through the stone. The Titans were hunting them. Serena's staff flared, her silver eyes hardening again. They will not stop. Not until you are dead or the sword is buried once more. Alex pushed himself to his feet, gripping the hilt tighter. His body ached, his lungs burned, but he met her gaze with steady resolve. Then we don't let them stop us. For a long moment, she stared at him. Then she nodded, slow and reluctant, but sure. And in that silent agreement, something shifted between them. They were no longer enemies, no longer strangers. They were bound by the sword, by survival, and by the quiet, unspoken thread that connected their broken hearts. The underways opened before them like veins carved into the mountain's heart. The walls shimmered with faint light, the crystal veins glowing pale blue, guiding them through twisting corridors that stretched for miles. The rumble of the Titans above was muffled here, though not gone. Their roars still echoed faintly, reminders that the hunt was far from over. Alex trudged beside Serena, the sword slung across his back. It felt heavy, though not in the physical sense. Every step was weighed down by its presence, its constant hum inside his body, the way it seemed to whisper at the edges of his thoughts. He caught himself gripping the hilt unconsciously, like a soldier clinging to a rifle he couldn't put down. Serena walked ahead, silent for long stretches. Her staff glowed faintly, the only sound her boots crunching against the crystalline gravel. But Alex could sense her thoughts circling, heavy as his own. Finally, he broke the silence. Back on the plateau, you said the sword chooses the broken, that it rejected you because you still had hope. Her shoulders stiffened. Yes. Then why stay near it? Why guide me? You could have left me to die. She stopped, turned. The glow of her staff lit her face. Sharp cheekbones and fierce, silver eyes softened by the shadows. For a moment, she looked less like a warrior and more like something caught between duty and grief. Because I know what it means if the sword has chosen you, she said quietly. It means the war that consumed my people will rise again. And if that is true, then I cannot abandon you. Not until I know if you will save us, or destroy what little remains. Her honesty hit harder than a blade. Alex swallowed. And what do you think so far? Her gaze lingered on him. In the silence, the faint hum of the sword echoed between them, like a second heartbeat binding them together. I think, she said finally, you are reckless, stubborn, and weaker than you believe. He let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. You sound like my brother. Something flickered in her eyes at the word brother. You lost him in your war, she said. Not a question, but a statement. Alex's chest tightened. He nodded. Yeah, he was all I had. And when I couldn't save him, everything else stopped mattering. Serena studied him in silence. Then, unexpectedly, she knelt, resting her staff on the ground. Among my people, we honor the dead by speaking their names in the dark. The walls carry them forward, so they are never lost. Alex blinked, his throat tightening. His name was Daniel. Her silver eyes softened. She closed them briefly, bowing her head. Daniel, she repeated, her voice low and resonant, echoing softly along the cavern walls. The sound lingered, like a prayer carried into eternity. Alex's vision blurred for a moment, but he smiled through it. Thank you. Serena rose, her expression unreadable again, but something between them had shifted. Not pity, not duty, something closer to kinship. They walked on, side by side this time. Hours passed. The underways twisted deeper, the crystals growing larger, their glow casting shifting patterns on the stone. At times, the passages narrowed until they brushed shoulders. At others, vast chambers opened around them, ceilings lost in darkness. In one such chamber, they stopped to rest. Alex collapsed onto a flat stone, groaning. Serena remained standing, scanning the shadows with her hawk-like eyes. "You don't trust me yet," Alex said, breaking the silence. Her gaze flicked to him. "Trust is earned, and fighting wardens together doesn't count," he asked with a crooked grin. Her lips twitched, just barely. "Perhaps it counts a little." He chuckled, then leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "You know, for someone who says humans are fragile, you're spending a lot of time making sure one stays alive." Her silver eyes locked onto his. For a long heartbeat, she said nothing. Then, "Perhaps I am curious." Alex tilted his head. "Curious about what?" "Why the sword chose you," she said. Her voice was steady, but quieter now. Why it would abandon centuries of tradition and bloodlines to bind itself to a mortal with nothing but grief and stubbornness. He thought about that, staring at the glowing crystals above. "Maybe because it knew I'd carry it even if it killed me. Maybe because I don't know how to stop fighting." Silence followed, but it wasn't cold this time. It was heavy with thought, with questions neither of them could answer yet. Then the cavern shook. The ground buckled, cracks racing across the floor. From the shadows, a sound rose, a low, guttural growl, far different from the warden's. Serena's staff ignited in a flare of blue fire. "They found us." Alex stood, drawing the sword. The moment his hand closed around the hilt, it flared with cobalt light, filling the chamber with blinding brilliance. The growls grew louder. Shapes emerged from the dark, smaller than the titans above, but faster, leaner, with bodies like molten wolves and eyes burning white-hot. Dozens of them. Serena spun her staff, ready. "Stay close to me." Alex lifted the sword, its hum vibrating through his bones. He looked at her, her blue skin glowing under the blade's light, her silver eyes fierce but no longer distant. "Together," he said, and she nodded. The creatures leapt. Steel and fire met stone and shadow, human and alien side by side, bound by survival, by loss, and by the first sparks of trust that could ignite into something far more dangerous than war. The chamber erupted in chaos. Shadows lunged from every side, molten wolves with jaws of stone and fire, their eyes burning like coals. The sound of their roars filled the cavern, shaking crystals loose from the ceiling. Alex raised the sword instinctively. The blade sang as it cut through the dark, leaving a trail of cobalt fire in its wake. The first creature leapt, and with a desperate swing, Alex split clean through the chest. The impact exploded in a burst of glowing shards, the creature's body collapsing into molten fragments that hissed on the cavern floor. Another wolf lunged at his side. Serena was faster. Her staff flashed, striking with surgical precision, slicing the beast's head free in a spray of molten sparks. Her movements were a blur, every strike fluid, every step a dance of survival honed by years of discipline. "Keep moving," she shouted. But there were too many. They poured from the shadows, claws scraping stone, snarls echoing until the chamber itself seemed alive with fury. Alex swung again, the sword heavy in his grip, but alive, guiding his movements, almost pulling his arms where they needed to go. Each strike carved arcs of light, each swing cracking through bodies of fire and stone. He should have been terrified, exhausted, but the blade filled him with raw power, burning through his veins like wildfire. For a moment, he felt invincible. Then reality struck. A wolf slammed into him from the side, its claws raking across his armor. He stumbled, crashing into the wall, pain ripping through his ribs where his rebreather had already been cracked. The wolf lunged again, jaws wide. Before he could raise the sword, Serena was there. She thrust her staff into the creature's mouth, twisting hard until it shattered in an eruption of shards. The blast sprayed across her arm, burning deep into her blue skin. She cried out, stumbling back. "Serena!" Alex's heart lurched. He slashed another wolf aside and rushed to her. Her arms smoked, The skin blistered and seared where molten fragments had torn through. "I'm fine," she snapped through clenched teeth, but her voice wavered. Another wolf lunged, and Alex swung the sword with everything he had, cleaving it in two. He planted himself in front of her, the sword humming louder, the light blazing brighter. "You saved me. Now I save you." Her silver eyes locked on him, wide with something more than pain. For a heartbeat, it wasn't battle between them. It was a connection forged in fire. Then the wolves regrouped. Dozens more poured into the chamber, their numbers unending, their eyes glowing hotter. Serenia forced herself upright, gripping her staff in her uninjured arm. "We cannot kill them all." Alex's chest heaved. He could feel the sword pushing him, whispering in his mind, urging him to unleash more, to give himself over completely. The hum grew into a roar, the cobalt veins along the blade flaring until it felt like holding lightning itself. He realized what it wanted. If he let go, if he surrendered to the sword, it would burn the chamber clean, annihilate the wolves. But it would take him with it. His knuckles whitened on the hilt. He thought of Daniel, of loss, of the emptiness that had driven him here. Maybe this was what he was meant for, to be consumed so others could survive. He raised the blade, ready to let it happen. But then, Serenia's hand gripped his wrist. Strong, unyielding. Her silver eyes blazed into his, fierce despite her pain. "No," she said, voice shaking but steady. "Do not give yourself away. Not like this." The sword's roar thundered in his chest, fighting her words. But her touch anchored him, pulling him back from the edge. "You are more than grief," she said, her voice raw. "If the sword chose you, then prove it. Live." The wolves closed in. Alex clenched his jaw, every muscle trembling. And then, instead of surrendering to the sword, he forced himself to focus, not on despair, not on rage, but on her, on the strength in her eyes, the fire in her voice, the way she had spoken his brother's name in the dark. The sword shifted, its hum steadied, no longer screaming for sacrifice, but resonating with his will. Alex roared and swung. The blade erupted in a wave of cobalt fire, but this time it didn't consume him. It swept across the chamber, a storm of light that tore through the wolves, shattering them in a chain of explosions. Shards rained like meteors, the chamber blinding with brilliance. When the light faded, silence fell. The floor was littered with smoking fragments, the wolves gone. Alex dropped to one knee, gasping, the sword still glowing faintly in his grip. His body shook, but he was alive. Serenia staggered beside him, her burned arm trembling, but her silver eyes fixed on him with something new, something that had never been there before. Respect, relief, and a dangerous spark that went deeper. "You did not let it take you," she said softly. Alex met her gaze. His chest still heaved, his body still burned, but for the first time in years he felt alive. "Not while you're here," he whispered. The words hung between them, heavier than any battle. The cavern was silent at last. The smoke of shattered creatures curled upward, vanishing into cracks high in the ceiling. The crystals along the walls pulsed faintly, as if the mountain itself were breathing again after holding its breath. Alex sat slumped against a stone pillar, every muscle screaming. The sword lay across his lap, still glowing faintly, but calm, its hum reduced to a soft throb, like a heartbeat in sync with his own. For once, it wasn't demanding, only resting. Serenia knelt nearby. Her burned arm was wrapped hastily with a strip torn from her cloak, but the wound still smoked. Her blue skin blistered and cracked. She worked in silence, her jaw tight, but Alex could see the tremor in her fingers. "You need help," he said, his voice raw. She shot him a sharp look. "You are in worse shape than I am." He forced a weak grin. "Maybe, but I heal slower than you. Humans aren't exactly built for fire wolves." For a moment, her lips twitched. Not a smile exactly, but something softer than her usual sharpness. She lowered her eyes and let out a quiet breath. "You're kind. You surprise me." Alex leaned his head back against the stone, closing his eyes. "That makes two of us." Silence fell between them again, but it was different this time. Not strained, not distant. The air was heavy with exhaustion, but also with the strange comfort of having survived together. Finally, Serenia rose and crossed to him. She knelt at his side, pulling a small vial from the pouch at her belt. The liquid inside glowed faintly. "Drink," she said. Alex eyed it warily. "What is it?" "Healing draft. It will not taste pleasant, but it will keep you standing." He smirked. "I'll take standing over the alternative." She tilted the vial toward his lips, and for a second he almost pulled back, stubborn pride whispering that he could do it himself. But the way her silver eyes held his left him still. He let her guide it, the liquid burning bitter down his throat, then spreading warmth through his chest. He coughed, grimacing. "You weren't kidding about the taste." Her mouth curved slightly. "If it tasted good, my people would never save any for the wounded." The warmth grew stronger, dulling the pain in his ribs, easing the fire in his lungs. He let out a long breath, relief flooding him. "Better. Thanks." Serena sat back, her injured arm resting against her side. For a moment, she looked smaller, less like the unyielding warrior, and more like someone carrying a weight too heavy for any one being. Alex studied her in the glow of the crystals. "Back there, when you stopped me from giving in to the sword, you saved more than my life. You stopped me from losing myself." She didn't meet his gaze at first. Her silver eyes lingered on the shards of the fallen creatures. Finally, she spoke. "The sword does not seek heroes. It seeks hosts. That is why it whispers of sacrifice. It feeds on despair. But you resisted. That has never happened before." Her gaze shifted to him at last, steady, searching. Perhaps the sword did not make a mistake after all. The words hit Alex deeper than he expected. He looked down at the blade across his lap. Its glow reflected in his eyes, steady and calm. For the first time, he didn't feel like it was a curse. He met her gaze again. "Maybe it chose both of us." The chamber held their silence, the pulse of the crystals casting shifting shadows across their faces. Serena's eyes softened, just slightly. She reached out with her uninjured hand, brushing the back of his wrist where he still clutched the sword. The contact was brief, tentative, but it carried more weight than any battle. "You should rest," she said finally, her voice quieter now. "So should you," Alex answered, but his chest felt lighter than it had in years. They sat in the chamber together, two survivors bound not just by the sword, but by something far more fragile and far more dangerous. The mountain had grown quiet. Beyond the cavern walls, the tremors had faded, leaving only the low hum of the crystals, steady like a heartbeat. The battlefield was gone, yet the memory of fire and shadows lingered in Alex's chest. He sat with his back against the pillar, the sword resting across his knees, its cobalt light dim but present. It no longer felt alien in his hands. Not a parasite, not a burden, something else. A companion, a reflection of his own choices. Serena moved carefully through the chamber, her blue skin catching the glow as she collected fragments of the shattered beasts. She placed each shard with care into a pouch, as if they were relics, not remnants of monsters. Alex watched her for a while, his mind still turning over the chaos, the fire, the near death. "Why keep those?" he asked finally, his voice quiet. She glanced at him, then down at the shards. "Every creature is born of the mountain's heart. Even twisted by darkness, they carry pieces of its truth. To discard them is to forget that truth." Alex tilted his head. "Even your enemies deserve to be remembered." "Not enemies," she corrected softly. "Warnings." The weight of her words settled over him. He thought of Earth, of wars fought for nothing, of his brother lost in a blast that no one even remembered years later. How many lives have been discarded, unnamed, unmarked, just warnings ignored? His chest tightened. "On my world, we don't keep reminders. We bury them, pretend they never happened." Serena studied him, her silver eyes reflecting the faint glow. "That is why you carry grief like a wound that will not close. You were never taught to honor it." Her words pierced deeper than any claw or flame. Alex looked away, blinking against the sting in his eyes. He hadn't cried in years. Not for Daniel, not for the ashes of home. But here, on a planet of fire and crystal, an alien with blue skin and a wounded arm saw through him as no one else had. He laughed weakly, the sound rough. "You always know exactly where to strike." Her mouth curved just slightly. Warriors must know how to read the battlefield, even when the battlefield is someone's heart. The silence that followed was heavy but not suffocating. It wrapped around them like a cloak, intimate in its stillness. Alex finally dared to look at her again. The burns on her arm were harsh, her hair streaked with ash, her body weary. Yet in that moment she looked stronger than anyone he had ever known. "You saved me," he said softly. Her brow furrowed. "You saved me." They held each other's gaze, the truth hanging between them. Neither wanted to admit it, but both understood. Survival had tied them together. Not just as comrades, not just as wielders of a cursed sword, but as something far more fragile and far more dangerous. Serena looked away first. She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The crystals painted their faces in shifting shades of blue and white. "Your world," she said quietly. "You left it behind, didn't you?" Alex nodded slowly. "Nothing left for me there. And yet," she gestured to the sword in his lap, "now you carry something that could change not only your world, but mine." The thought weighed on him. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't come to this planet searching for destiny. He had only been chasing echoes, ghosts of a brother he couldn't let go. But somehow, in losing everything, he had been handed a choice bigger than himself. He swallowed hard. Maybe that's the point. You don't choose what breaks you, but maybe you get to choose what you do with the pieces. Serena's silver eyes softened, the closest he had seen them to vulnerable. "Then perhaps you are not only chosen. Perhaps you are worthy." The words struck deeper than the sword's hum. For the first time since Daniel's death, Alex felt something shift inside him. Not healing, not yet, but the beginning of it. They sat together in the glow, two survivors bound by fire, grief, and a sword that could have destroyed them both. And yet, instead of ruin, it had given them this moment. Fragile, impossible, but real. Alex let out a long breath, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what happens next." Serena's gaze lingered on him, unwavering. "Neither do I." For the first time, the uncertainty didn't feel like a curse. It felt like possibility. The mountain no longer rumbled. Dawn had broken across the alien horizon, painting the jagged peaks in silver and pale gold. The once hostile landscape seemed quieter, almost reverent, as if the planet itself knew what had been carried out within its heart. Alex stood at the edge of a ridge, the forbidden sword strapped across his back. Its glow had dimmed to a faint shimmer, as though it too rested after the struggle. He stared out at the rising light, the chill of morning air sharp in his lungs. For the first time in years, he wasn't haunted by silence. Behind him, Serena approached, her footsteps soft on the stone. She had rewrapped her burned arm with clean cloth, but the scars were already forming, shimmering faintly against her blue skin. Marks of survival. Marks of choice. "You're leaving," she said, not as a question, but as a truth. Alex turned to her, lips pressed tight. "I can't stay. Not yet. My people, my world, they need to know what's out here. What this sword really is." She studied him, her silver eyes reflecting the new dawn. "Your world may not believe you." He gave a tired smile. "They didn't believe me about a lot of things. But maybe this time, I can make them listen." Serena stepped closer, the distance between them closing until he could feel the faint warmth of her presence. "The sword chose you, but does not bind you to this place. If you go know this," her voice softened, almost breaking, "you will not walk alone. The bond we forged in fire does not break with distance." Alex swallowed, the weight of her words hitting harder than any battle. He reached up, his fingers brushing lightly against her scarred arm. The contact was brief, fragile, but it carried every unspoken truth between them. "I'll come back," he whispered, "no matter what it takes." For a moment, neither moved. The mountain stood silent witness as two different worlds touched, human and alien, bound by loss, survival, and something neither dared fully name. Finally, Serena stepped back, her expression composed once more. "Then I will wait. Not because the sword wills it, but because I do." Alex nodded, his throat tight. He turned toward the horizon where his ship waited, battered but functional. Every step away from her felt heavier than the last, but the promise they had forged burned hotter than any flame. As he reached the edge of the ridge, he glanced back one final time. Serena stood tall against the rising sun, her blue hair glowing like fire and water at once, her silver eyes fixed on him. A guardian, a companion, something more. The sword pulsed faintly against his back, not in demand, but in agreement. For the first time, Alex didn't feel like a broken man chasing ghosts. He felt like a human who had been chosen, not by destiny, not by a cursed weapon, but by someone who saw him for who he was. And that changed everything. Thank you for following this story. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment sharing what you thought of this journey. Your voice keeps these stories alive and helps us bring even more to life.